Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Friday, it is Todd McFarlane Day, so we're looking at Spawn issue number 24, cover dated September 1994, and what you're looking at here with this cover, I think, is probably the last bit of comic book artwork that Todd McFarlane actually produced on his own before kind of, his toy company taking off and being very successful, where he basically just became the writer and inker of Spawn and eventually, shared the duties inking with Danny Miki and eventually was not even inking. Danny Miki was doing that all over, of course, Greg Capullo's pencils, who came in after Tom McFarlane. I'll be reviewing the Greg Capullo stuff pretty soon once we're done with McFarlane. We are done with him as far as Spawn goes with this issue. This is officially the last issue he drew, at least credits-wise, canon-wise, I guess. But as I've been pointing out in the last few issues, I definitely think Greg Capullo is doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to layouts and pencils, and McFarlane is just kind of putting that McFarlane sheen on top of it to kind of pass it off, as some actual McFarlane art, but always in the credits thanking Greg Capullo every issue. It's been happening for the last about 4 issues, 21, 22, 23, and 24, I believe. And the covers, not that they're not great images, but they have been basically exercises in meeting deadlines real quick. So here's another good example of that, of just, a basic circle in the middle with Spawn in it. You don't have to draw the complicated bits you don't like to draw and take longer sometimes to perfect, like this kind of junction for some reason in a 3/4. I still struggle with this. The junction between the midsection and the hips and how wide and all this. McFarlane just uses the cape to draw over the parts he doesn't feel like drawing, which is kind of funny. But still kind of works design-wise and graphically in the way, what McFarlane is adept at is the flash pizzazz and design on top, which again hide whatever shortcuts he may take in some of the drawing. For example, right? Let's talk about McFarlane and the chains. So he's got chains moving around here, but if you really pay attention, and if you've ever noticed with Spawn, and as opposed to Greg Capullo, who's really good at foreshortening, McFarlane is not, I think McFarlane probably struggles more with foreshortening and he needs to take more time to get it right. And so when he doesn't have to do it, he's pretty happy. And on Spawn, he's kind of settled into a style where there's not that much foreshortening throughout at least the later part of the series that he draws. And then Capullo comes in, he's got great mastery of that. So there's going to be a lot of that, and there's going to be chains coming towards you and stuff. But with McFarlane, if you've ever noticed, he just draws 2D chains, like almost always. I don't think I've ever seen him kind of twist it around or anything. So what I mean by that is, even though the chain is moving and flexing and turning in circles and curving, if you really pay attention, you're getting, say, we'll call it a top view of a chain link, right? This bit here, and then you're getting the side view, which is linking one to the other. And that's all you get throughout this whole thing. You never get this thing here moving in space in a 3D fashion, right? So kind of a design trick that McFarlane uses to get through drawing chains, because drawing chains sucks, to be honest. It's pretty hard to draw some chains like foreshortened and coming towards you. Man, start drawing some chains. It's going to take you a while to figure everything out. And I only mention this because even to this day, whenever I have to draw chains, they're very similar to the way McFarlane does it. It's like a visual trick that he's developed that I'm sure me and many other artists have probably aped over the years. It's just a shorthand, quick way to draw chains without having to overcomplicate it too much and get through a page pretty quickly. So he's using that same design sense here on this cover. Not the best of the Spawn covers, but it'll do for, I guess, McFarlane's last piece of artwork, again, at least at this period. So the actual issue itself, because it's not, I don't believe most of the art is actually Tom McFarlane other than the inking on top, right? Just, it kind of wraps up the whole Terry, the guy, Spawn's friend when he was still alive, Al's friend, Terry, Spawn died as Al Simmons and was gone for 5 years. So in that interim time, Terry married his girlfriend, Al Simmons' girlfriend, and gave her a child, so that just adds to Spawn's torment, obviously. And now all the agencies and stuff, they know there's a connection. They think Terry might be this kind of, mafia killer that's been out there that's, at first is basically Violator, and then they're attributing it to Spawn. And then I guess they're saying that Terry is Spawn or something. So that's basically what's going on. All these agencies are running after Terry, trying to kill him, and he doesn't know why. What agencies? Well, there's the police looking for him and Spawn as in the form of Sam and Twitch. You know those characters, obviously, if you follow Spawn. There's the kind of CIA and stuff that Terry works for. intelligence agencies, and then there's also the mafia. So yeah, he's just being run after by everyone in the storyline. So that's the gist of it, and that's basically what happens in this issue, is that, you know, Spawn saves the day and saves Terry. And as we get to the end there, I'll show you kind of the cool part of the issue, what Spawn does. But art-wise, again, you know, a really well done down shot here. Again, I definitely attribute that way more, this kind of shot, to Greg Capullo than Todd McFarlane. Again, just like the chains, Todd McFarlane doesn't, he can do down shots and up shots and all this stuff, but generally does very little of it and shies away from it. And Greg Capullo is almost always all about that. A lot of the cool Greg Capullo drawings are just from such weird camera angles and interesting places. He's really creative when it comes to that stuff, and doing the foreshortening and the perspective. But yeah, all of this, just again, to me, angle-wise, composition-wise, storytelling, all screams, Greg Capullo way more than Todd McFarlane. Again, other than the slapped-on aesthetic on top. And it's a bit rougher than I think it'll become, right? So they're still kind of working out the kinks and seeing what works and what doesn't. And then it'll become a lot more kind of heavily detailed, but I guess slicker in a fashion. But for now, there's a kind of grit that at the time, like I said, once Greg Capullo jumped on this title after Todd, officially anyways, I was kind of out for a while because I just wasn't into Greg Capullo at that time. I didn't see it. And very quickly he would become super awesome on this title, and I definitely surpassed McFarlane, and I came back at a certain point. When I do the Savage Dragon review tomorrow, I'll talk a little bit about that as well, because there's a kind of connection to that in tomorrow's review, and this time period where, again, Greg Capullo coming on the title just kind of turns me off, but eventually he actually gets me to come back. But yeah, again, this kind of thing here with this point of view, again, it's the McFarlane look. He's looked at the Spawn issues. He's got all the visual tropes of Todd McFarlane. He's working them in there, right? Even, the inking definitely helps that it is McFarlane. So, the hand here with no actual finger definition, that's kind of a hallmark of Todd McFarlane. He kind of does it a little bit on this hand here. He just kind of hints at the fingers, right? So if you don't know better and you're not, used to Todd McFarlane's art or comic book art in general, you could think is, she handicapped somehow. Does she have, are those like the penguin's hands or something? See, like this shot here, there is no way, I don't see any McFarlane here in the underdrawing and the understructure. Even the inking is very odd, and I don't feel like it's McFarlane. Maybe he's still at this point getting help from other guys. Mark Pennington inked over Greg Capullo for those 16, 17, 18, I believe. He might be helping out again at this point. Danny Miki is not yet on the title either, so when he comes in, that'll really have the inking step up quite a bit as well. I mean, again, I have nothing bad to say about the artwork. It's very moody. It's very Spawn, obviously. Like you can see Greg Capullo now kind of putting a bit of a stamp on the look of the alleyways, and the dark shadows are different than how McFarlane does them. And he's taking stuff McFarlane does in a very kind of simple, basic, clear, almost in those cases Alex Toth kind of school, and now he's like taking those ideas and making them more complicated and more interesting in different angles. The inking I always thought was funny on this page, this face here of Tony Twist. I mean, that is his name, at least up until this point in all the lawsuits. There's almost like a Kirby kind of quality to the inking here. Like, this is what I mean about it kind of being rough. And for some reason, to me, that just, it's like someone decided to ink it a little bit, Mike Royer Kirby style. Don't know why. It's cool, though. Again, nothing about this screams McFarlane to me. This screams Greg Capullo. And the inking might be a little bit more intricate, but reminds me more of the stuff, again, that we saw in those earlier Capullo issues where he replaced on 16, 17, 18, and then eventually where they did that weird backtrack thing and 1920 came out later. Anyways, kind of weird. McFarlane's official last full comic story is Spawn Batman, which we'll be looking at next week's review. So, that's what I think he's putting most of his efforts into that visually before he puts, that's a lot. He knows at that point it's the last thing he's going to do, right? Last full book. And it's with Frank Miller. It's kind of a big thing. It's got a lot of clout marketing, so he's smart about it. And that's why, you know, he had those fill-in issues and things went back and forth. Once I get to reviewing those issues, I'll get into the details of that. It's kind of weird, but maybe it bought him some more time to put more kind of effort into the Spawn Batman book. I mean, when we look at it next week, we'll see if that's actually what we feel when we look at it. But for today, like I said, let's finish up this one here with Terry and the cops and the mafia and everyone just running after him. And Spawn's down for the count, but of course, you can't count Spawn out unless he reaches the end of his power meter, which, again, I haven't seen in a little while. But I do like just this interesting panel here, you know, the foreshadowing of what's going to happen next page, where the car's bearing down on Terry, you know, and just a little bit of a preview of just this Spawn's cape kind of creeping into the panel, I think is a very nice touch and a smart storytelling. You know, how to have a car go fast and not have to draw the whole car. Just draw the wheel here, a bunch of smoke. You can get through that panel real quick. Smart storytelling once again, right? You got the car here established. You got the guys in the car. Off you go. And it makes for a cool image. Sometimes it's like when you're drawing comics, not every image has to be a blow you away image. You know what I mean? It has to get ultimately the story across. And I definitely think this is a pure storytelling panel, drawn smartly, intelligently, so you don't have to put too much effort into it and move on to the next stuff, next panels, and next page. Pretty cool double page splash here. Is it warranted? I guess for the action and what's going on and the impact of it, sure. Good job on the smashing of the car and all the pieces here, and what, you know, McFarlane, we know, calls debris. You can clearly see the McFarlane inking on this piece 100%, but I definitely think the anatomy here, the way the shoulder connects to the arm and the muscles, I've maybe mentioned this before, Greg Capullo is a bodybuilder himself, so his anatomy is pretty much on point all the time from whatever angle. He'll exaggerate it, you know, but everything still connects as it does anatomically in reality in a human body. Yeah, this page looks great. Poster worthy if you take the words out, right? And basically, this is kind of where Spawn makes himself somewhat public or somewhat known, you know, after these past 24 issues, really, of hiding in the shadows and stuff. It's like he's making it official, and that's basically what, you know, this storyline is about at the end and the conclusion of it. Spawn establishing himself as a force to be reckoned with, you know, the FBI, the CIA, the mafia, the police, you know, and telling him how it's going to be. And basically he's found dirt on all of them, and he's going to be laying down the law. So this, again, is that public message. These alleys belong to Spawn. Boom. Should have thrown in his logo there. Kind of trademark the thing. I'm kidding. So yeah, so he's got some dirt on his ex-boss, Jason Wynn. Boom. Does the old Batman Dracula thing, right? Here's the file with all of it. Obviously, I have an extra copy for myself. Again, another example here. This drawing here, super small, right, far away, but there's just nothing McFarlane about this drawing. It's all Capullo. Goes to the police here, says, you know, he knows Sam and Twitch are on the up and up, and they're you know, honorable police officers, but obviously there's a lot of corruption in a Spawn comic in the police department. So he's got stuff on Chief Banks. I'd hate to see what the media would make of his range of extracurricular activities. So we know what that's referring to, or at least we, you know, probably guess that it's something illegal. Pulls the old Batman on Tony Twist as well. Feels like, you know, I remember back in the day, a lot of people said that McFarlane's writing was very similar to Miller's, and maybe a little bit of Alan Moore thrown in there. And I was like, I don't know if I see it, but now reviewing these Spawn comics specifically, I do see a lot of Millerisms, and I do feel that this stuff is very Dark Knight and very Frank Miller inspired. So Terry is just kind of sitting at home thinking about the whole situation, because he says all of a sudden, boom, everyone who was after me has just stopped coming after me, and he doesn't know what that is, right? Says someone messed with our lives, then just like that, it's all called off. It takes an awful lot of influence to do something like that. That scares me. Obviously, he doesn't know at that moment that Spawn is the one who kind of made that situation happen. And that's basically where we're left off. You know, you've seen Spawn kind of mopily, I guess creepily, watch over Wanda and Terry and Cyan and the family, right? He's kind of like their dark protector, their creepy dark protector in, hiding in the trees, watching over them. Very goth. Never realized how goth Spawn was back in the day. There you go, guys. Where's Ton going art-wise? Well, it's because of these guys that he's being pulled away, right? They said we couldn't make our own comics. We proved them wrong. Sure did. They said we couldn't make our own toys. Coming this September, we will prove them wrong again. And I gotta say, he sure did. It's funny, right? Because, like, you see the toys now, and they're basically, they're articulated and stuff, and you can still play with them, I guess, technically, if you wanted to. Just like these guys here. But they're basically small sculptures. They're works of art, and the detail is insane. Now, to think back, and look at these figures here, which now kind of look slightly dated, I would say, and kind of run-of-the-mill generally, right? You can get some figures today, cheap figures, that kind of look like this. But back in the day, this was like, no toy company was doing anything as detailed, as textured, as intricate, right? Like, Spawn's got the chains and the skulls and stuff already, like, and the cape, this big plastic cape that they gave him. It really worked as a toy. And they looked way cooler, than all the other toys out there. And that's, I think, the key to the success of McFarlane Toys, right? Pretty obvious, but yeah, this was the opening salvo. So that does it for this issue. Did want to mention, I saw this image fan art section. I was like, man, how many drawings here are copied literally from the comics? I'm pretty sure this one is, to a certain degree. This one for sure is copied off Rob Liefeld. This one I think is copied off Jim Lee. And these two down here, it's not even the same artist, but almost could be, both ripping off Jay Lee there. So yeah, that was a common thing in the fan art section in early Image Comics. Wildcats Adventures, just a one-page ad. We've already talked about that. Horrible cartoon. And yeah, so Spawn the Lost issues. So yeah, so I guess if I remember correctly, issues 16, 17, 18 came out, and then 21 came out, right? And McFarlane did his run, which we're done with this issue 24. I mean, his run officially. Pretty much Greg Capullo has been drawing it since issue 16, funny enough. But yeah, this is where he backtracked and had Greg Capullo once again do this two-parter where he meets Houdini, a different writer. Very kind of odd issues in the Spawn canon. So when I do finish off with the McFarlane reviews and move into the Capullo reviews, we'll get to those at some point, and I'll give you more details on what I find is just really odd and weird about this particular one here. The Morrison one, 16, 17, 18, to a certain extent is a little weird for Spawn, but still pretty much fits in canon pretty well. These two are just odd. I'll just say that, just odd. So there you go, guys. That is my review of officially Todd McFarlane's last full comic book. As I said, next week I'll be reviewing the book that I think actually deserves that title, which is Spawn Batman. So everyone out there, enjoy your weekend and have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.